4 million. What can you do with 4 million? And you have worked and you are now 70 years.
You can't be productive anymore.
So for me, it is a policy issue, and it has solutions because they are global templates. I hope your PSs who have gone to Singapore, but they didn't have to go there to learn this. It is a global domain, it's known. Government builds. NSSF is sort of putting up that tower, could have built another equivalent of Temangalo. What happened? Nsimbe. What happened? Yes, that thing of Lumumba. The other houses, they are a bit of 600 million in Ruboa. Who buys a house of 600 million? That guy can build himself one.
Not even a PS can afford.
So why didn't we develop low-cost housing somewhere and cater for a large number? National Housing used to have that in area, used to be low-cost. Now people bought the houses and changed them into bigger structures. But that's the idea. How do you deploy public resources and leverage private resources to cater for the needs of the poor? Of course, as you said earlier, it also speaks to the other required infrastructure. It's not about a house. Where is the water? Where is the transport? If we had the railway line going all the way to Bujuko and beyond, you can put this low-cost housing way 25 kilometers out of Kampala on Mtiana Road. The land is cheap, the houses are cheap, but the cost of coming to Kampala to work will be a penny because there is a train. It goes every 15 minutes or every 1 hour. That's how the developed world has done it. Low-cost housing is out of town, but the cost of going there and coming back is so low that you don't mind spending an hour on the road. You can build it in Bombo. A train will take 1 hour.
Yeah, even less.
Even less. But now a guy renting a house in Kawala is taking the same 1 hour to reach his workplace. So you'll be glad to go to Bombo, sleep there, and come. So that's how you do the broader level planning, which I don't think is here, but policy-wise it is possible. I hope the PSs will learn a story that in Singapore, where they have gone, majority of the citizens sleep in Malaysia.
Are you a woman with a small-scale business with a dream of growing it to another level? The GROW Project is here to support you in realizing your dream.
The GROW Project is a government initiative implemented by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development and Private Sector Foundation Uganda with support from the World Bank.
We support women-owned businesses across the country to gain hands-on and business management skills through training within your location, business financing through grants and affordable loans, and infrastructure in your areas of operation to enable you to increase your productivity.
If you have a business that makes sales of up to 800,000 Uganda shillings per month, the GROW Project has the tools and resources to help you succeed. For more information, contact your district or city GROW focal person or call our toll-free line on 0800 307 777 to learn more about how you can benefit from the GROW Project's services.
The GROW Project, empowering women economically, transforming communities.
They don't sleep in Singapore. Singapore is too tiny to accommodate housing. She says, you guys, here is making money like Kampala Central Business District. Sleeping, you go to Wakiso. Sleeping, you go to Mukono. But now for them, Wakiso and Mukono are in Malaysia. So every evening, you'll find Singaporeans going to Malaysia to sleep. And there is a whole huge estate industry in Malaysia built for the Singaporeans who go to sleep and come to work. The roads are perfect. You pay a toll road, but the meter reader is on the dashboard. So it's not even this thing of expressway stop, the girls and boys want you to pay 5. You pay, the thing will deduct. So as you are coming, it keeps deducting, and it will tell you it is gone down, you replenish. Now, but that's to make sure there are 15-20 lanes leaving Singapore into Malaysia, another 15-20 lanes entering every morning. And that's at one crossing point. There's another crossing point. So how do you do such kind of planning? You can decide and say, let's decongest Kampala. You guys, NSS, go and build in Nsimbe. But we are going to make sure there is a rail line connection. We are going to make sure there is a court there. There is a big facility like Kawempe and Kirudu, a hospital to take care of your needs there. We are going to put the schools there. There will be Chinatown. We will attract them to come and invest. You guys don't even have to come to Kampala. Forex bureaus, They will be there.
In 10 years, you find somebody has
As
never
to-
come this
you
side.
go to Nansana.
Mm.
There are 5 big banks in Nansana.
True.
Who wants to come to Kampala? There are forex bureaus in Nansana. There are supermarkets in Nansana.
Their own world.
There are malls. They are in their own world. But those guys were crowding Kasubi, trying to get into town to change dollars. No. So you really decongest Kampala, and then you begin complaining about traffic jam. There are people in Kampala who don't want to be in Kampala. Makerere would open a branch there. Universities will go there.
Because it's viable, it's feasible.
It's viable. Then food markets will go there. Oh, these guys in Chikobo. Now we have Chikobo online.
Oh, yes.
Things will be delivered there. A truck will go straight to Msimbe. That was the idea of that NSSF. But needed the cooperation from across the others. But that's how the developed world has grown. I don't think I needed to take PSs to Singapore. What is their pay per day? I think it's possibly now $800 or $700 a
You
day.
have about 40 PSs.
Who are going to be there, I don't know for how many days.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks,
14
each PS is possibly $700 times the 14 days. The air ticket, they all fly business class. That ticket is nothing less than $4,000. Who has made the money? Emirates. I hope they went by Uganda and it doesn't land there, it lands in India. Maybe they will need another connection. These are rational, realistic things where a poor man weds and there is no cake and there is no veil. He knows he needs to wed. The cake is not what he weds.
Exactly.
Have paid the church fee. Can you be realistic to your basics? Nigina shoes are not the best, but it's what this family can afford.
Now, very finally, Doctor, this issue, I'm taking you back a little bit on the foreclosures. If
Yes.
it continues worsening, banks get properties, they can't get buyers for
Yes,
them. Where
yes.
does that lead the economy? Recession, collapse?
It's a bad signal, but we're expecting the bankers also to sober up because they are making losses. They're making losses. If you lend somebody 2 billion and the asset they give you are going to sell it at 1 billion, you're going to make a loss of that 1 billion.
Yes.
It writes down your capital. You're going to begin asking shareholders to bring back more capital because the capital is eroded.
And this is already happening.
That is already happening to many banks. And that also is what partly prompted the central bank to say, I'm raising the minimum capital requirement.
Okay.
Because a lot of banks had very little capital to manage the risks of that nature. You can't write off and write off and write off and then your capital is finished. So they moved from the minimum capital of 25 billion to 150. Because they noticed these banks are making mistakes. The economy is not that strong and agile. So a lot of foreclosures are eroding bank capital. At 150 you can write off and still remain a bit viable and recapitalize. So the bankers themselves, that was a signal. Sober up. And that's why I'm saying when I see my pride going up instead of down, that's a plus. There must be a very good management in the pride model, which is supporting the small businesses.
Bearer someday.
It will definitely rise up. Give it another time, it will move up to tier 1 and become a big bank. But I don't think government must have a bank. No, it must grow organically and respond to these needs. So it's not a good thing that we see write-offs. First of all, you are changing business ownership. Muhumza, who is losing this school, had passion in education, had passion in the school. The guy who is buying the school is not buying a school. He's just buying the land cheaply.
The buildings.
He may put in poultry. He may actually just buy the land and leave it idle. And you have seen most of these buildings that have changed ownership. People have not invested anything in them. They just captured that wealth. Because remember, your asset, the land title and the unfinished structure is 10 billion. I'm going to pay the bank 2 billion, but I will capture value of 10 and park it there. So there are people who are simply doing that. Now you're not going to grow your economy when all you have are opportunistic investors. People who are speculative. His 10 billion is to capture assets and leave them there. You wanted that 10 billion to be feeding into economic growth. That's why you'll find that the economy in Uganda slows down. And they've said you want to get worried, you may get into a recession. You may not get into a recession because a recession, technically you have negative growth, the economy is shrinking. It may not shrink, but is it growing at the speed at which it should? That also is dangerous. I find Ugandans celebrating 6% growth, 7% growth. I'm like, no, this economy needs to be growing at 10% plus, 12%, going by its needs of the population, the needs to raise money, the needs to pay the debt. We need to be growing at 12 plus percent. 7 is not good enough. You don't get on a border to go to Guru. You will be moving, but man, you're missing the point. So if the economy continues into these kinds of growth investments, we are going to have a problem of not necessarily a recession, but slow growth. And any plane that does not reach the takeoff and cruise level speed, I don't want to be on that plane. Because a plane must rise up. So if this economy is growing at a slow pace, it's not going to attract those investors that we're talking about. Because they are looking into the future. What is the future of the Ugandan economy? Can I invest there? Or can I simply do trading? Even most of the Chinese that have come here are simply doing assembly and trading. They could have come and put the factories here. That's a problem.
Chinese trading.
Yeah, but they are seeing, why should I bring a factory? As we said earlier, can I come and put a factory for shoes here? They put it in Addis. Because there is leather there, there's also leather here. But from Addis, they can reach the globe, including Uganda. So when I see Uganda's growth rate, Uganda's trends, it does not excite the kind of investor I would love to see in Uganda. We have gold investors in the refinery. They saw the trend. Gold is here. You refine it. You sell it. So they came. Can I get more in the other sectors? Where are they going to come from? Cement fellows have come. So you want to do that signaling. So anytime you see foreclosures, it is a positive sign to investors.
Positive?
I mean, a negative sign to the investors. It's a negative sign to the bankers. It's a negative sign on the economy. You don't want to see foreclosures. Sell is not good. It speaks to an economy that may not be in a recession, but is literally not healthy.
But is it possible we can wake up to a day when there is nobody buying those properties?
Already we have some cases where properties can't be sold. There are properties that can't be sold.
Then what happens in a situation like that?
The bank carries the burden.
It owns the property. It remains.
You can't own the property. Eventually, you have to sell it at whatever price. But that's not the selling price. I don't call that a market.
Okay.
If I'm buying a car of 100 million and I'm paying 10, you don't say I sold it. No, you wrote it off. You just recovered some market dues. A friend of mine took a goat to sell in the market and sold, and all the goat revenues went into the market dues and the transport. He went back home without any value. So that guy can't say I sold a goat. You sold it at 70, but the transport, the market dues wiped out the entire 70. You came back home the way you came. But at least you have disposed of the goat. Now, we have already reached those levels that some buildings are changing ownership, some land are changing ownership, some assets are changing, but not at the market value. You are simply, the bank is simply saying, I don't want to deploy guards. You man, can you give us anything? Take it.
Now, Doctor, you see we are looking at the money part, but there is also this social part.
Yes.
Some of these are houses, people's homes.
Yes.
Just think about the stress. You evicted, you have no home. Now a man is 70, has to start a new life with his children, and that's another.
Now what do you do?
That's another problem. I think government needs to have.
But does government have the capacity? The best that government can do is set the right policies. So that this guy borrowing and staking his house will get a viable business and not lose his property. Or spread the knowledge. Now, Americans have suffered. The American economy suffered because they had that. Every person must own a home. So they put mortgage products, they put all sorts of things. People can borrow cheaply, lend to poor into housing. They lend to them. The global financial crisis arose out of those toxic assets. That people who should not have gotten loans to get into the housing market went there and failed to pay. We have a lot of people on salary loans, but really they are trying to do building of construction. Now,
graduate from renting to
but they are using a wrong product, as we say, the short-term loan for a long-term investment. The bank is giving you 3 years, 400 million. How will you get 300 million? 400 million may not even build you a house. What if the job is done? before in between. So you need a whole strategy of how do you develop the housing market. It would have been good, we have a housing finance bank. It is a housing finance bank.
And it's doing 60%.
I wouldn't want it to be a commercial bank in the same line as Stanchart, as Centenary, as Post Bank and Baroda. It is a housing finance bank. It should be banking housing. So how do you allow it to match these long-term assets with the deposits? Because it must only access long-term capital for itself. It's a government bank, owned by government majority, slightly above 51%. Then NSSF is the other player. Now NSSF has long-term obligations, and that was the intention. Let NSSF be an owner in the housing finance bank, because the obligations of NSSF are long-term. Any young man who is 25, 30 would not pick that man until he is 55. So we can commit this money into a mortgage of 18 years and lend to the same young man. See, by the way, why don't you come? You are a member of NSSF. Join Housing Finance Bank. Get a loan of 300 million. You will be paying 2 million, maybe even 1 over a period, which is equivalent to his rent. So he's renting to own.
Oh, yes.
He's renting to own.
True.
You're spending the same thing, but every time you pay rent, you begin to own the piece. 18 years later, that is your house. But now 18 years later, you have rented, the house is still not yours and you get evicted. So that's where government policy needs to come in. But don't come in to begin bailing out. You are a poor government, you don't have that money. Set the policy right. First of all, stop borrowing from NSSF. You as government.
So that the money is
the money of NSSF now goes into this. Because now you are doing us a mismatch. NSSF deposits are long term, but you are borrowing them, converting them into short term 2-year bonds, 91 treasury bills, 1-year treasury bills. So you are distorting the economy, diverting its growth journey into a short term consumption and bonanza party. That's not right. So we need to get back and say, how do we, NSSF and Housing Finance Bank, between government of Uganda and NSSF, structure a mortgage product to be financed at a lower rate using pension funds. But Mr. Government, first leave pension funds, borrowing them to pay salaries and fuel for police. Find another way of doing that. Leave this money for Ugandans to own houses. Then you will be home and dry. Even the poor who are saving with NSSF will go there.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
It is a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time.